Okay, so this class is being recorded today. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we spoke about Rabbi Yonason, not Rabbi Yonason, Yaakov Emden. And today I thought we'd go into some of the converts in Jewish history, a little bit of the, I'll try to do it from historical context, although some of them, especially the older ones, were very, very difficult to get information on because of, it's more the stories that happened with them and more the stories that happened to them, more the stories of what happened. And we get a little bits and pieces of their personality from that. So I thought that today we would start with biblical converts. And then next class we'll go into the converts in the Roman times. And then we'll go into the converts of the medieval and maybe a little bit of modern.
We almost got it.
Yehudis. Stop it. Yehudis. Okay, sorry about the disturbance. So we're going to go through. So this week we'll go through biblical. Then we're going to go through the Roman era. Then we'll go through medieval and maybe into modern times. Modern times is going to be very, very difficult because you've got a expansion of converts like never in history. There was a Pew survey about 7-8 years ago, where the survey came out that 20% of people that recognize themselves as Jewish in the United States were not born Jewish. That's pretty much saying that 20% of those that recognize themselves as Jewish today are either converts or somebody who wasn't born Jewish who decided that they are Jewish, whether it was a halachic conversion or non-halachic conversion. The point is that if 20% of American Jews, which is about 6 million people, that means that there's over a million people who consider themselves converts in one way or form just in the United States. And we could see throughout, there's so many converts here in Tasmania and in other parts of the world. There's been a expansion of converts like maybe there's only one time in history where we had this sort of amount of converts, which was the Roman era. But in the Roman era, we only know the limited amount of what's been passed through to today, rather than that which is of the past. So going through the different converts, I'm not going to be able to mention every biblical convert because there are a lot. I had someone give me a listing of over 30 different converts that I mentioned throughout the Bible, but I would just go through about 5 or 6 of them. Although some of them I've found more information, some of them it was like too much to sift through all the information to find the historical context. So it might be a little bit difficult with those. So the first one I'm going to go through is the daughter of Pharaoh. Her name in in the Book of Chronicles and Book of Yomim is Bisya, or as it's known in the rabbinic circles or known in the Christian world as Batya. This is the woman who saved Moses in the Nile. Now, the question is, did she convert or did she not convert? At that point, there was no real Jewish people because it was before the giving of the Torah. It was before Mount Sinai. Being that it was before Mount Sinai, the only Jewish people were those that were the only Israelites were those that were descended from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, although many, many people followed in the footsteps of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as we find that it says that when Abraham went to the land of Canaan, when he traveled from Haran, and he traveled to Canaan, what happened with Abraham? That he took all those that were with him. And the Medrash explains, what do you mean all those that were with him? That there were many, many people that the Abraham and Sarah had converted to this idea of monotheism. They had brought them into the concept of monotheism. So although they weren't Jewish, they were considered converted to the concept of monotheism, which would be the same as somebody who today believes in Islam. Today, anyone who believes in one God would be considered similar to what those people that Abraham and Sarah did. It says what happened to those people. So it says that those people, their souls are found within the converts that convert to Judaism today. What that exactly means, I don't know. I don't know if I can really explain those sort of spiritual concepts, but the idea of that these souls are found within those converts, and therefore the converts are able to uplift those souls during the days of Abraham and Sarah who had converted. So getting back to Batya or Bisya, she's only mentioned in the Bible once. Although by the story of Moses, she's called. It talks a whole story about her coming to the Nile, and that it doesn't actually mention her name there. It just says the daughter of Pharaoh. It only mentions her name in the book of Chronicles, where it's going through all the different people, and it's going through Kalev ben Yefunne's family, and it tells you the children of Kalev, and then it says the Jewish woman that bore, and it gives a whole bunch of names. It gives 6 names. Sorry, that Yehudia, the Jewish woman, married Mered, had these names, and then it says that she was Batya Bas Paran. Now, it's very, very, in the verse itself, it's very hard to understand it, because you don't see who this Mered is. You don't see who, you know that he's part of Kalev's family because it's talking about the children of Kalev, but it doesn't actually say. So the Talmud on that says that Mered was Kalev. So the same person who was the spy, one of the 12 spies that came into Israel, the 2 spies that were good was Caleb and Joshua. So that same individual married Batya, according to this explanation of that verse of who Mered is. In another place, it says that Caleb married Miriam. So whether it was that he had 2 wives or whether it was at different points, I don't know. But we do find that it is. There's another place that explains that goes through all of these different names and explains that all of these names are actually referring to Moses. Why is it referring to Moses? Because Batya was the one who connected, she raised him, and therefore it gives all these different names to say the greatness of the person who raised Moses. Now, out of all the names that Moses has, I think, 11 names at different points. Him and his father-in-law were in a competition who could have the most names, which we're going to get to his father-in-law soon, because he's another convert that we're going to speak. So Moses has many names. Out of all the names that Moses had, which one do we use? The one that Batya called him. The name that the Pharaoh's daughter gave to Moses, that is the name that we use for Moses. So every time you hear the name Moses, we're using the name that the Egyptian daughter of Pharaoh gave. Therefore, it's actually very strong when Medrash says that she converted, and then it says, why was she going to the Nile to bathe? There weren't any bathhouses in the house of Pharaoh. I mean, Pharaoh was a wealthy individual, wouldn't he have had? So it says that she was going to rid herself of idols. What does it mean? She was going to get rid of herself of idols. She was going to remove the idolatry. She growing up in Egypt, was from the height of Egypt. So she obviously wanted to learn more, understand more, and she saw this enslaved group of people that believed in one God. And she took that according to the and decided that she wanted to connect with that, and therefore she went through a form of conversion to convert to Judaism and become a Jew. You see that when her maidservants told her that that she shouldn't, that the maidservants were like against her when she tried to save Moses. They said that when you have a country that makes a rule, you have many people that will flaunt the laws and won't keep them. But the children of the politician are going to keep the law. I mean, today you have these places where they make restrictions, and then you see the actual person who's making the restrictions go and flaunt their own restrictions in some places. But the concept is that at least the family, the ones that are close to the person who's doing it, who is at least the one who's close to how do I say? At least the ones who are close should follow it. And she looked at it and said, her moral code was higher than her father's, and she said, just because my father is throwing Jewish children into the Nile doesn't mean that I need to follow his evil. I don't need to go in my father's evil steps. And she took on that. Took on saving Moses. Interestingly, in the Islamic world, they talk about her saving Moses. And when she saves Moses, it says that Pharaoh tried wanted to kill Moses, and she saved Moses. And then it says that she then, in their tradition, that she was then killed, tortured and killed for saving Moses' life. That's in the Islamic tradition. Just to side point, I mean, it's that's in their traditions, and we don't find that in any Jewish or any Christian sort of tradition. It's not really found. So I just mention it.
But you don't hear about it when he left Egypt. There's no mention of. Look, I'm not that familiar with the Bible of him taking his mother with him. So maybe she just stayed on when he left. What happened?
Well, he had to run from Egypt. He had to escape because Pharaoh tried to kill him, and he had to escape. We don't have any mention of her after that. The only mention of her is her relationship to Caleb or to Mered, as it in the Book of Chronicles.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people that get mentioned at one point and don't get mentioned later. Doesn't mean that they didn't exist later. It just means that they were not there. So I hope I covered enough about Batya, and I'm going to go to the next convert, which again is related to Moses, which is Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, or Jethro in English terminology, or King James terminology, I should say. I mean, it's hard to with these names that some of them are very, very far off from the original names that are in the Torah, but that's the way the Christians have done it, and therefore that's the English terminology of it today. So he he's a very famous figure of his fact that he came in the desert to Moses and was the first one to proclaim and to say thanks to God for the miracles that caused the Jewish people. So before any Jewish person did it, Jethro was the first person to actually go and make the praises to God, as we can see from that's how we see it in the Bible. Going to his background, So in Islamic tradition, he was a great-grandchild of Midian, which would actually make him quite an old man by the time of Moses. As Midian was a son of Abraham in his later days. So would it mean that in the days of Moses he would have been about 250 years old? If it's the same individual, but that's the Islamic tradition. In Judaism, we look at him. He was originally one of the three main advisors to Pharaoh. So the three main advisors were Bilam, Eov, Job, and Jethro. So those three were the advisors to Pharaoh, and Bilam was the one who advised Pharaoh to enslave the Jewish people. Eov's job was quiet, and Jethro said that you have to look at their history, and anybody who's gone against them has always failed. And he brought up the stories of Shechem, the stories with Pharaoh, with every time, or with Avimelech. There's many different stories in the biblical context where people who attacked the family of the Jewish people ended up getting severe punishment, and so therefore he said it's not worth dealing with these people. It's not worth going through these people in this sort of manner. Because of his negativity and because of that, he ended up having to run away from Egypt and ended up in Midian. Now, it says that he was Kohen Midian, a priest of Midian. So in the Islamic traditions, he's actually the prince of Midian, but either way, he's considered considered the Kohen. He's the priest. He's the one who's doing all the things. And the Medrash explains on it that he went and he tried out every religion out there. He was jumped from religion to religion. He tried every idolatry, every sort of single religion, until he removed all of those. Everything else, he removed all the others, and decided to go with the Abrahamic tradition, and to believe, which was the tradition of the father of Midian, which was Abraham, to go with the idea of one God. Now, in Midian. So in Midian, the Midianites didn't like it how their priest, the one who was doing all the services for them, suddenly became a believer in one God. And he suddenly became a believer in one God, and they had a problem with that. And therefore, when his daughters, so therefore he couldn't find anyone who would shepherd his sheep, and that's why he had to have his own daughters shepherd his sheep. His own daughters were the ones needed to shepherd, because he couldn't find anyone who would take into business with him because of his changed from their religion to a concept of monotheistic, becoming a monotheist. So he became a monotheist, and that caused all of these things. So that's why you find that his daughters were the ones that came to the well, and because his daughters came to the well, the other shepherds used to make trouble for them, used to make it very, very difficult, and therefore, when Moses ended up by the well in Midian, as the story goes, that after running away from Egypt, eventually Moses arrives in Midian, and when he arrives in Midian, he comes to the well, and he sees the shepherds making it difficult for Jethro's daughters. Being that he made it difficult for Jethro's daughters, the daughters were quite upset. I would say they were quite. They were having difficulty, and Moses stopped the other shepherds, and he went and he gave their sheep to drink, and they came home early. They come home early. Jethro knows that it's been a long time, and every time they come, there's always issues, and it takes forever for his daughters to actually be able to feed the sheep, to give the water for the sheep to drink. And suddenly they come home early. He says, "What's going on? Why'd you come home early?" And they tell him that there was this Egyptian who came to save us. And the question is, why are they calling Moses an Egyptian? So there are those that say the reason they're calling Moses an Egyptian was because he grew up in Egypt and he grew up in the house of Pharaoh. But there are others that say that you have sometimes where you have a situation where there's somebody who gets the case that gets burnt, and he's running to the water to cool down the burn, and he sees a child drowning in the water, and he goes and he saves the child. So the child says thank you to the man who saves him. The man says, "No, you should say thank you to the fire that caused me to go to the water." I think the story is actually a scorpion bites him and he goes to the water. But the similar idea that he ends up in the water, he ends up by the water because of that reason. So too, Moses, because he had to run away from the Egyptians, so therefore, because of that, he ended up in Midian, where he was able to save the daughters of Jethro. Now Jethro hears this, and he's like, "You better invite. You didn't. Someone comes and saves you, and you don't invite him to lunch." And he invites them for lunch, and Moses ends up marrying his daughter Zipporah, which he married his daughter Zipporah, which is another convert. Which is the Talmud says that when the verse says that Moses was married to a Cushite woman, that just like you could tell straight away that a black person is black, you could tell the righteousness of Moses' wife, Zipporah. That's how the Talmud describes Zipporah. So getting back to Jethro himself, so Jethro had this personality where he didn't care what others thought of him. He was a person who obviously was searching for the truth. Very, very intelligent person, as you see when he came to Moses. He was able to give Moses advice to help Moses out, to help him learn who he really is and what he should, and to learn how to run a system, how to run a leadership system, which we see from Moses.
Question.
Yes.
Then by default, Moses' wife wasn't Jewish.
Moses' wife is no.
It's okay, but there are nice case for a cat.
Maybe upstairs.
Upstairs is
Maybe upstairs, yeah.
Sorry.
Because if Jethro was a father, assuming the mother wasn't Jewish either, so Moses' wife wouldn't have been Jewish.
Correct, but so Moses' wife also would have converted. Remember, prior to the giving of the Torah, the entire conversion was solely of accepting. Was the concept of accepting the sole purpose of the conversion was just accepting the Torah, not accepting the Torah, accepting
one God.
the one God. So
But
that like when I spoke about by the days of Abraham, that the people that were converted by Abraham, what does it mean by they converted? They didn't become actually Jewish, but it means that they started believing in the monotheistic idea of one God, which Abraham disseminated.
So it's only after the 10 Commandments were received
only after the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai,
Right.
which then conversion became a different process. Till then, the concept of circumcision was only for the descendants of Abraham,
Well, those are the Jews.
which are the
And the
Jewish people.
Muslims.
Yeah, which the Jews, the Israelites, and the other descendants of Keturah.
You saying, I just want to get it right in my true brain, that on Sinai there were other things other than the 10 Commandments that were presented.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the Torah was given on Mount Sinai.
Not just the 10
Yeah,
Commandments.
613 commandments.
Oh, because I didn't
10. It's the 10 utterances were uttered by God
Mhm.
on Mount Sinai.
Yes.
It's a mistranslation.
Right.
10 Commandments is a mistranslation
No.
because the word is Elahad Varim. These are the utterances.
Right.
Yeah, here it is.
I'm hungry.
Have some vegetables. So the word is Devarim, which means utterances.
Mhm.
For some reason, the Christians took it as translated it to commandments. It doesn't say that they're 10 commandments.
Mhm.
Maimonides actually finds more than 10 commandments in those 10 utterances.
Mhm.
And so that becomes the whole thing. So the word is really utterances. I guess the idea of 10 commandments came because the Christians look at it as those are the only ones that are important, and the rest is all something else, like not as important.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's what, and that's the point of the. So that point is when the real concept of conversion comes to play, because until then, converting was just the idea of believing in one God. Although it does say that they kept that the forefathers kept the mitzvot. But does that mean physically kept those 613, or does that mean more in a spiritual sense? It's a good question. And, it would be a question. So the getting back to what we're saying. So these are the okay. So we're going back to Jethro. So Jethro is he has his daughter. His daughter then marries Moses, and we find that a number of others married into the Jewish people. A number of his children, and as it ends up that his grandchildren, great grandchildren, end up becoming members of the Sanhedrin, members of in all areas. Please give me space, okay? The children. Okay, so the children becomes the children, and the grandchildren become great individuals. It seems that his grandchildren seem to have stayed separate from the Jewish people. I'm not sure.
Moses.
No, Jethro. Jethro's descendants stayed separate.
But those were Moses' children.
Yes, there was Moses' children. We're talking about other grandchildren of his.
Oh.
I'm sure that some of them mixed into the Jewish people, but some of them ended up becoming. Some of them ended up, and you find that when later on, when there was the war with Sisera, that Sisera actually caused. Sisera was a general of the. Sisera was a general Sisera, who was a general, was fighting against the days of Deborah, Deborah the prophetess, and at that point he runs to the house of one of these descendants of Yisro, thinking that he's going to be saved, and actually the wife Yael ends up killing this general in her own home because he had escaped there, and therefore ended up finishing off the war when Sisera was trouble for the Jewish people. You find that right through in the days of King David, it talks about his connection with some of the descendants of Israel. It seems that his descendants were told not to drink any wine and to dwell in tents, not to dwell in a home, because they were to be completely connected to God. They were on a higher sort of plane, and these descendants were still around at the destruction of the first temple. So this family kept themselves strong all the way until the times of the destruction of the first temple, which is over 800 years later. They had kept strong was his family from his conversion. And then he ended up coming to the Jewish people, joining them by the giving of the Torah, by the being at Mount Sinai, and that's where we find the story of Jethro actually giving the instructions to his son-in-law of how to run a court system. Going to the next individual, I thought I'd cover more, but it looks like we're running low on time. The next individual I want to bring up was Rahab. Rahab she was known in the Bible as Rahab Hazona, and it's very, very peculiar that somebody would be known by their work. What is? Okay, so up to, so we're going to go into Rahab Hazona. Rahab she lived in the city of Jericho. It seems that from the Medrash that she was 50 years old at the time when they had the. She was 50 years old when the spies came to Israel two spies in the days of Joshua came, and it says they stayed in the house of Rahab Hazona. Now, there's two opinions on what the word Zona means, and it could be that it's both are true. One is the word Zona means harlot.
Means what?
Harlot.
Harlot, prostitute.
Yeah, so she was into prostitution and that. The other opinion is that she was a. The other opinion was that Zona comes from the word zon, which means to give sustenance, meaning that it was an innkeeper. He had an inn. So there is an opinion that she actually did both. That she had both was a prostitute and had an inn. Now the amazing thing with her is that here you have somebody who seems to be from the low of the low, and yet and she's recorded as that. Yet it says that she is one of the great women in Jewish history. She is considered one of the great women. And how do we see that? When the two spies came into her home and they entered into her home, so she had a place where all sorts of horrible things were going on, all sorts of illicit relationships were going on, and it was not a nice place to be. It wasn't the proper place for a person to be. Yet these two men, they came in and they were not affected whatsoever by all that was going on around her. And this she had seen for the first time in her life, that people could come, they could stay, and not have any effect from all the negativity that's going on. And this turned her around in one moment. In 1 minute that she saw these two individuals come into her home. And obviously they came into her home because where's the last place she's going to look for spies? In the house of the prostitute. Also, maybe it is also says that maybe they were there because there were a lot of that because she was the high end on the high end, so therefore a lot of officers and stuff like that used to use her, and therefore they felt that it would be a way to find good information about the city of Jericho from staying there. So they're staying there. She sees this, and she sees these people are not effective whatsoever. It has no effect, and she realizes that there's something greater than everyday life. There's something that's greater to have individuals who can completely control their inclination, who completely control themselves, to have full control over their mind and body, was something that she had not seen. And because of that, felt that this is the truth, and she changed her mind straight away. She changed, and she decided that she's going to do what she can to help the Jewish people, and she goes to help them. Interestingly, it says that she got a low form of prophecy just from doing that. Just from that small turnaround, she got a form of prophecy that she tells them. She lets them down through the rope. She tells the spies that they're only going to search for you for 3 days. So just hide for 3 days in the hills, and then you'll be able to go back without any issues. How did she know how long they're going to be searching for? Because she got a level of prophecy that gave her this idea that she was able to pick up how long they would have the search party out for these two men. And you see that it says in the Medrash that she married Joshua, who was the leader of the Jewish people, which shows the idea that she had completely turned over, completely changed in who she was. I'll just mention on a side point, the Christians believe that she married Solomon and ended up being an ancestor of King David, but that is not in any Jewish source anywhere, this concept.
What's her name again?
Rahab.
Rahab.
Rahab, yeah.
Rahab. Okay. Thank you.
And in Hebrew it's Rahab.
Rahab. Okay.
Which again, so here she turns around. It says that she started her prostitution when she was 10 years old and went through the 40 years in the desert. And the entire time the Jewish people were in the desert. And at the end of the 40 years of all that she was doing, she completely turned around, and she is looked at one of the greatest people. The Talmud says that she has amongst her descendants quite a number, 8 prophets. Although if you look into it, it's actually more than 8 prophets, because those 8 prophets happen to also be the parents of 3 other prophets, or the ancestors of 3 other prophets, and therefore it ends up being 11 prophets. But she, her merit of her being a great person, her great individual, she merited to have these prophets as her descendants. Although it's once you get to 10 generations down, a person has 1,000 ancestors, which is very easy to be descended from a lot of different people. But the fact is that it was her that the Talmud says it was from her merit. So the manner of how she's looked in Jewish sources is very, very strong and very positive in that regard. It's now 2:00, so we will conclude there.
Oh, I was beginning to enjoy that.
I can continue going, but it's